This past weekend, I was hanging out at a casino. People are cheering, people were winning, people were drinking, having a good time. Just kind of wasting time, over the weekend, and I get a text message from someone, and they tell me that Alexander Dugin's daughter was killed in a car bombing in Moscow, and that it was believed the assassination attempt was on Dugin himself. Now, CNN refers to this man as the spiritual guide to Putin's Ukraine invasion. He's been referred to as Putin's brain. Now, others say he's not all that influential and his ideas aren't particularly reflected in Russian policy. But nonetheless, this is a shocking escalation of the conflict. And I don't know if this rises to, a Franz Ferdinand type situation, because Daria Dugina, the daughter of Alexander Dugin, is not like a government official or family member of someone in government or military, but she was a very highly influential person claiming to just be a journalist, while the West has called her a Russian propagandist and far right. And so I'm hanging out at this casino and I see that message and I'm just like, whoa, man. For a variety of reasons. Not just that this, could be a dramatic escalation into a potential World War III. That's what some people think. I was told in the text, World War III, race and civil war. How about that? I'm like, yeah. But I was kind of shocked because it's just escalated to the point of assassinations. If this is the case, Dugin is not, this guy in Russia, he is not like Putin's right-hand man or anything. This is ideological conflict, and this guy is heavily influential when it comes to nationalist ideology. Even people in the West, listen to what he has to say, and there's probably a lot of people I'm sure there are a lot of people who agree with him. So we're at the point now where they're blowing up cars and assassinating people. The CNN has the report here, and they say that it was remotely detonated. And that means they knew they were going for this man's daughter. So as I'm sitting in this casino, looking at the story, I just look around after getting word that a highly influential Russian philosopher, the brain of Putin, or whatever you want to call him, his daughter was just blown up. That's what the Daily Mail said, blown to pieces. It's horrifying, man. I'm not happy with any death. And I look around at all the happy, smiling faces playing their games. And not everybody was smiling. Some people were losing, but you get the point. And I was talking to people, and I was just like, it's kind of crazy. This news is just breaking right now, and here we are about to throw some dice and maybe win or lose $10, $15. I think the minimum was 50. No, I think it was 10. And most people don't know or care. They have no idea what's happening outside this world, outside this room. They have no idea what's happening in the rest of the world. And what's funny is that's how war always is. I recently came across one of the most exciting things ever. I have a massive collection now of Life magazines I got the first Life magazine weekly print, and going all the way up until the 70s. So I don't have every single one, but a lot of them having to do with war. And it's just crazy to see these magazines coming out once a week, but also while the cover of the magazines show World War II, while they show soldiers and they explain death, every so often there's one that's just like some woman, celebrity woman. And it's because what people don't seem to realize is that even during great wars, regular people will keep on carrying on doing regular people stuff. You can't expect them to just stop. And that's what people need to understand. The reason I say that is right now we are dealing with one of the most serious and dramatic escalations. This could be the destabilization of Russia internally. It could be foreign assassination attempts on highly influential Russians. It could be governmental. It could be the Ukrainian government. It could be NATO. We don't know. A dramatic escalation. And you see, when it comes to civil war and when it comes to World War III or whatever kind of escalation we're dealing with, a lot of people sit back and they see their friends and their families playing video games. They see their friends and their family not paying attention. And they say, certainly it cannot be the case that we are entering World War III. Nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. It's remarkable. But that's how the world has always been, even during great times of war. There are people doing regular things, trying to live. Go take a look at videos from the Syrian civil war. And you'll see people carrying bread and food down the street as buildings are collapsing or riddled with bullets. Because what do you think people do? People have to live. But because of movies, because of media, and because people just don't have experience to this stuff, they think that during war, everyone's running and ducking and sliding on the ground. And no, No, this is it. This is how serious things can be. And so how does something like this, what if something like this comes to the United States? Probably not. I mean, the difference between Moscow, which, Russia shares a border with Ukraine. Russia's blaming Ukraine right now. Ukraine's denying it. A lot of people think it was Ukrainian government sending a message, because I'll tell you this. According to CNN, it was detonated remotely. Somebody was believed to be observing the vehicle. Now, some people think they were trying to kill Dugin, and that what happened was his daughter switched vehicles with him, so she's the one who got hit. That may be the case, but according to CNN, somebody was watching the vehicle and pressed that button. That means they knew it was his daughter. And I'll tell you, it would have been, in terms of escalation, killing the daughter is worse. You kill a man like Dugin, and who mourns? His fans, his followers, that's for sure. You kill a man like Dugin, who is not really Putin's inner circle. Does Putin mourn? Perhaps, but only perhaps. You kill Dugin's daughter, and who mourns? Dugin himself. A man watching his daughter die. He was there. There's a picture of him staring at the wreckage where his daughter was obliterated by would-be assassins. By assassins, we can only presume. Now, a man in that situation of that deep influence, he mourns. And the sound he will make will resonate with all of his followers, and he has followers within the government. I don't know how severe it is that it was Dugin's daughter, because, again, he's not a general. He's not in Putin's inner circle, but he is deeply influential. And when a man like this, his daughter is killed, and his attention is turned from saying, here's what I believe, to I want retribution, his followers will listen. And that's a message that would not resonate had they actually targeted him. Now, of course, if Dugin himself was assassinated, Daria would have come out and said, my father was killed. Many people would come out and say this is a crime and a travesty. But the deep influence of the man himself would not be there. With his daughter dying, every message he stated, every person who's listened, every governmental official will now hear his voice booming like thunder as he demands retribution for the assassination of his 29-year-old daughter. So we don't know where this goes. Because again, it's not Franz Ferdinand. Before we get started, I only do this in the most extreme of circumstances. Head over to safeandreadymeals.com. Safe and Ready Meals emergency food kits. You can get 30-day, what do they got? They got 1 month, 30-day emergency food kit, 2,000 calories, 43 grams of protein per day. They last up to 25 years. Safeandreadymeals.com. I don't know what the world has in store. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if this will escalate to some kind of World War III. I mean, a lot of people think we're already there. And I'll tell you this. For whatever reason, you find it necessary to pick up an emergency food kit from Safe and Ready Meals. Just make sure it's the right decision for you. And I'll tell you, they got, you want to get it before the crisis strikes, they say. Because while we talk about Civil War and World War III, there's something much more simple. Safe and Ready Meals, they show a picture of a flood. And that's it. I saw a story as I was reading the news this morning about a woman who got washed away in a flood. Yeah, sometimes it floods, man. And when it does, are you going to have food that's not going to perish, that you can easily whip up and get a variety of nutrients that you're probably going to need? Arrives within a few days. Safeandreadymeals.com. You get $50. You save $50 when you buy through safeandreadymeals.com. I said it a million times. If World War III or Civil War does come, I hope you've taken your precautions. We had Mike Glover on the show last week. Amazing guy. And he was talking about how insane it is. We both work, because we both say people don't prepare. Sometimes it rains, man. Where we are out in the middle of nowhere in the winter, there's no snow plow in rural areas. We got to do it. And sometimes the roads you can't drive on. Sometimes it gets bad. You get deep snow. Emergency food makes sense. I'm shouting it out because this story really freaked me out. It was kind of a crazy experience. I'm sitting in this casino. Took a second to pause and look around. And everybody smiling, the ladies coming around handing out drinks. And I was just like, yo, someone just blew up a car in Moscow, the Russian capital, killing the daughter of one of its most influential political personalities and philosophers. Nobody cared. And it's not because they didn't care. They didn't know. That's the issue. You know, for me, even when I'm in a casino, I'm checking my phone. I'm like, I want to make sure, and boom, there's the news. And I'm like, oh, man. CNN reports. Russian authorities said on Sunday they'd open a murder investigation after the daughter of influential ultra-nationalist philosopher Alexander Dugin was killed by a car bomb on the outskirts of Moscow. The Russian investigative committee said it believed someone planned and ordered the car explosion that killed Daria Dugina based on evidence already collected from the blast. Quote, taking into account the data already obtained, the investigation believes that the crime was pre-planned and was of an ordered nature, the investigative committee said in a statement on Sunday. Dugin had died at the scene after an explosive device presumably installed in the Toyota Land Cruiser went off on a public road and the car caught fire. At around 9 p.m. local time on Saturday, near the village of Bolshy Vyazemy, according to the press service of the Russian Investigative Committee, as reported by the Russian state news agency TASS. The bomb was detonated remotely, a law enforcement official told TASS Monday. Presumably the car was monitored and its movement was controlled, the unnamed official told the news agency. Dugina's father is a Russian author and ideologue credited with being the architect or spiritual guide to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He is purported to have significant influence over Russian President Vladimir Putin and was described as Putin's brain by Foreign Affairs magazine. Both Dugin and his daughter have been sanctioned by the U.S. The United Kingdom sanctioned Dugina in July for being a frequent and high-profile contributor of disinformation in relation to Ukraine and to Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine on various online platforms. Now, I'll show you some stuff that I can. Russians with Attitude made this claim. I did not verify it. So for those that can read, I believe, Ukrainian, take this one and take it with a grain of salt. Now, I show this not because I want to say this is a confirmed statement. I don't know. I can't read this, and nor have I verified the posting from Andrei Yermak. Why I'm showing you this, though, is because the pro-Russian individuals and anti-war individuals, not all pro-Russia, believe it to be true. This will be a motivating factor for these individuals. Russians with Attitude tweeted, today, the head of presidential administration in Ukraine, Andrei Yermak, said, quote, our task is to make sure that not only the current generation of Russians, but their children and grandchildren will pay. 8 hours later, Alexander Dugin's daughter, Daria, was killed. Now, that's terrifying. Some people believe that this was a message stating they killed his daughter on purpose. Now, should this prove true, I would only say add this to the CNN reporting that, or I should say, CNN reporting that a law enforcement in Russia told Russian media somebody remotely detonated the bomb. They knew it was Daria. It's a scary thought to target a man's daughter like this, but she herself was particularly influential. It's sad stuff, man. I hate war. I hate it. I hate war. Daria Dugina, she had her views. She had her ideology. She stood by it. Perhaps she was a propagandist. Perhaps you believe she a journalist. She was 29 years old. This is the horror of war, man. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm so excited about these Life magazines. What we're going to do is, for one, the most important element of this of these magazines that we procured. Well, Antique Shop, just bought a bunch, is the research component that's going to be able to aid our conversations in Timcast IRL and my conversations here to understand the modern, at the time, perspective on the war, to understand what the journalists were telling the people at that time, in their words, without being tainted by modern or delicate sensibilities, is profound. You're not going to hear about hindsight. We knew what they were doing in World War II. No, you're going to see some crazy things. Did you know that Hitler was Person of the Year in Time magazine? I believe it was 1941. The writings of the man before we realized the extent of his madness and evil. Now, that stuff, that's really interesting. How could a man like that come to power? Well, many people wrote nice things about him. And you look back on that and you see that's so horrifying if they just were able to call him out and stop this man. You see the horror stories, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds being killed in war. That's the horror of war. Daria Dugina, she was sanctioned. She was 29 years old. She said she's just a journalist. She was just a journalist. She responded by saying she's only an ordinary journalist and should not have been sanctioned. But they claimed, the British government, she was a frequent and high-profile contributor of disinformation. Right now, many people are reporting that Dugin is the spiritual guide and Putin's brain. Well, Wikipedia, they say, Dugin's influence with the Russian government and Russian President Vladimir Putin is disputed. And this is Wikipedia. I mean, it's not like they're not biased, right? With Dugin sometimes being referred as to Putin's brain by elements of the media, responsible for shaping Russia's foreign policy, while others contend that Dugin's influence within the government is limited and has been greatly exaggerated, an impression given by correlations between his work and Russian foreign policy. Yep. I don't know. I can't predict the future, nor am I deeply entrenched in the understandings of foreign policy on these of Russia and things like that. Russians with Attitude highlights some really horrifying messaging. They say there is truly nothing more pathetic in this world than the hordes of vultures who rejoice over the murder of a young woman. Unable to stop the Russian military inching towards defeat every day, they can only take out their wrath on civilians like an impotent serial killer. Many of these messages saying they rejoice at the death of this man's daughter. Daughter of Sauron's mouth got what's coming, some said. You reap what you sow. Have fun in hell. This is the problem of war. Do you think that Daria Dugina or Alexander Dugin believe themselves evil? Of course they don't. They think they are justified. They think that their ideology is correct. Daria Dugina, perceived by her supporters, is simply a journalist. And the message will be clear to the people in Russia that the West and that Ukraine are assassinating journalists. And now, of course, in the West, they sit back and say this is a lie. She was a propagandist, a liar and manipulator, the daughter of a deeply evil man, and she must be stopped. They say the same thing about people in the United States. This is the problem of war, because no one is right. Now, they'll say, over Russians with Attitude, the Ukrainians said they got to make the future generations of Russians pay. And then a 29-year-old woman was killed. It doesn't matter in war what is true. That's terrifying. And I'm not saying that it's a good thing, not by a long shot. What I'm saying is that people on either side of war will believe what they trust and not what they don't trust. And if you come out and say on CNN that they detonated this remotely, regardless of whether that reporting or the statement is true, people will believe it and people will disbelieve it for whatever reason. People in Russia will say, the West is evil. They're expanding on our borders. It's a massive military expansion of cronyist capitalist might. And they're killing journalists. That's what they're saying right now in Russia. And so what do you think that does? The scary thing, I suppose, well, I do want to point out, Conflict News reporting this morning, Moscow claims Ukraine was behind the death of Kremlin's ideologue Alexander Dugin, his daughter Daria Dugin, that Ukraine was behind it. Right now, the West is saying this. Is Kremlin's inner circle turning on Vladimir? Fear grows in Moscow that daughter of Putin's Rasputin was killed by Russian car bomb, as even President's former commander says Ukraine may have made him look like a clown. That's another theory. Resistance factions in Russia. I don't believe it. I don't think so. There's a war going on Russia's border in Ukraine. Why would Russians do this? Of course, there are Russians who deeply oppose Vladimir Putin. They say he's a dictator. He's been in power for 2 decades or slightly longer, I believe. And they oppose the war. So perhaps. We don't know for sure. But all that matters in the end is that those who are engaging in the war have something that boosts their zeal and their drive. How about the death of a young woman, 29 years old, claiming to be just a journalist, but accused of being a propagandist? And I'm not going to ascribe either. The point is, Dugin, you will hear his voice. And his voice is already loud. Add to that voice the death of his daughter, who wasn't just killed, but was vaporized. He won't even be able to lay her to rest. And this powerful and influential man, his voice will resonate like thunder booming in a chasm, echoing. And people will hear it, and his supporters will hear it. And he will say, They are targeting our children and our journalists. They will use this to argue the West has no restraint. You know, when I was at this shop the other day buying these magazines, I was reminded, this guy, he was telling me he was just a couple years too young to have been drafted into Vietnam. And he said, nothing is fair in war. The stories that he heard, the news reports, the death counts, the propaganda, nothing is fair. It's just war. Yeah. And that's where we are now. World War III, perhaps. A Franz Ferdinand-like situation. Maybe, maybe not. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. So this could be something worse. With the death of Franz Ferdinand, you basically had a high governmental royal family member killed, which triggered a series of alliances and declarations of war and defensive pacts. With this, I fear it may actually be a Franz Ferdinand moment. And you know why? Because this is the influencer era of political and entertainment influence. We have an influence economy. It's not about retribution of an individual whose family member got killed in government. It's about those who command persuasion on the internet and in writing, having the ability to command great power. Dugin certainly is that, regardless of the reach he has within the Russian government. When he speaks about his daughter's death and how he feels, his followers, to his followers, that sentiment will be felt far and wide, and it will impact government. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.